Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be tackling Solana.
Oh, nice.
Specifically, we're trying to figure out what in the world is next for Solana after all this crazy price action and
Yeah,
the volatility we've been seeing
for sure.
in the market. So you sent me over three sources.
Okay.
One from a Solana influencer,
All right.
another that was like some serious technical analysis,
Oh, wow.
and a third that was looking at like the bigger crypto market picture.
Awesome. Sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, so basically we're trying to find like, is there a signal here
Right.
in all this noise? Especially with
Yeah.
some people saying Solana's dead.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
Oh!
Solana killer or Solana dead?
Yeah, exactly. So first off, I think we got to acknowledge like the elephant in the room. All three sources basically paint this pretty bleak picture of the market right now. One even mentioned the crypto fear and greed index hitting a one-year low.
Wow.
And apparently February was the worst month ever for crypto prices.
Yeah, it's been a rough one.
Yeah.
For sure. You know, when you see headlines like that, though, it's natural to feel anxious, right?
Right.
But what's really important to remember is this fear can actually create opportunities.
Oh, interesting.
You know, think about it. When everyone is panicking and selling, it can actually drive prices down to levels that are like fundamentally undervalued.
Right.
And that's when kind of savvy investors can maybe swoop in and snag some bargains.
So you're saying there might be like a silver lining to all this like doom and gloom?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, I like that. But let's get specific about Solana. Both the influencer and the technical analysis expert pointed out the price drop. So, and we're not talking about like a little dip here. The technical analysis even showed what they call like a double top pattern.
Oh, the dreaded double top.
On the Solana Bitcoin chart. What is that?
So for like our listener who maybe isn't like super familiar with all the chart patterns, double top is a bearish signal. It often means like more price declines could be coming.
Oh, no.
It basically, you know, if you look at a price chart, it looks like two peaks that are kind of the same height.
Okay.
And that kind of suggests that the buying momentum is getting weaker.
Oh, okay.
But he also mentioned that Solana might be getting oversold.
Okay.
So that means the price has dropped so much that it could be below its actual like intrinsic value.
Interesting.
And he was pointing to indicators like the RSI, which measures, you know, how much price has changed recently to see if something's overbought or oversold.
So even with the double top, there's a chance that like
potential
selling is overdone.
Yeah.
And it could be ready for a bounce. It's like everyone's jumping off the ship, but maybe they jumped a little too soon.
Right. Maybe.
Okay, so that's interesting. We also have to consider this upcoming token unlock event.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
11 million SOL tokens are about to be released. And that's got a lot of people worried. The influencer kind of brushed it off and said it's already like priced in by the market. But is that really true? I mean, 11 million SOL is a pretty significant chunk to hit the market all at once.
Yeah, it definitely has the potential to shake things up. So just so our listeners clear on like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Token unlocks are basically these predetermined amounts of cryptocurrency that get like released into circulation.
Okay.
And these are often held by like early investors, project team. If a lot of these like newly unlocked tokens are sold, it can like increase the selling pressure and drive the price down. So whether this particular unlock is priced in, it's debatable. We'd have to like look at historical data from previous Solana unlocks and see how the price reacted.
Interesting.
We could also see like who's actually getting these unlocked tokens. Have they sold in the past or do they tend to hold?
So it's not just about the amount of SOL being unlocked, but the behavior of the people getting it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a big poker game trying to read everyone's mind.
A little bit, yeah.
That's really interesting. Another thing that the influencer really hammered on was Solana being the Ethereum killer.
Right, of course.
They were talking about daily active users and transaction volume and lower fees, even comparing market cap per daily active user. But then our technical expert shows that Ethereum is actually outperforming Solana on the ETH-BTC trading pair.
Interesting.
So who's right?
Well, this is where it gets tricky. I mean, comparing blockchains is not like a simple apples-to-apples comparison.
Right.
The influencer is really focused on things that show Solana's strengths right now, like adoption and usability.
Makes sense.
But the technical guy is looking at relative price performance.
Okay.
Which can tell you about investor confidence and market sentiment.
Oh, that's a good point.
So the best blockchain really depends on like what you're looking for in your investing strategy.
So it's not really that one is better. It's more about which one fits what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, are you looking for adoption and real-world use cases?
Right.
Or is it more about long-term value and market dominance?
Yeah.
What do you think is important when you're comparing chains?
That's a good question. I mean, I think Solana has a lot going for it. Fast transactions, low fees, rapidly growing ecosystem.
For sure.
But Ethereum is like the OG.
It is.
It has that huge first mover advantage and a network that's really tough to beat.
Definitely. And it's got a strong community and commitment to decentralization. And that's important to a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so it's a pretty complex question, though.
It is.
With a lot of things to consider. And to make things even more interesting, our third source, the market update video, brought in some macroeconomics.
Oh, a favorite.
They tied Bitcoin's price movements to global liquidity, suggesting that as M2 money supply increases, we could see a recovery. But then they also highlighted some scary economic indicators like the U.S. trade deficit.
Oh, yeah?
And potential for negative GDP growth.
Oh, wow.
So what do we make of all that?
Yeah. So here's where we have to zoom out and look at the big picture. Crypto doesn't exist like in a vacuum.
Right.
It's affected by what's happening in the global economy.
Right.
Just like any other asset class.
For sure.
So understanding those big trends can help us maybe anticipate how investors are feeling and maybe spot some opportunities.
So even though we're focused on Solana, we can't ignore what's happening in the rest of the economy.
Exactly.
Okay. So in this case, the expanding global liquidity could be good for crypto.
Right. It means there's more money out there, which could find its way to Bitcoin and potentially to altcoins like Solana.
Because money's always got to go somewhere, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
But it's not all good news.
Right.
Those negative indicators, the trade deficit, potential negative GDP growth, that creates uncertainty, and it makes people less likely to take risks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And when investors get nervous, they tend to pull back from those riskier assets.
Right.
Which could hurt crypto.
It's like a tug of war.
It is.
Between good and bad, and we're trying to figure out which side is going to win.
Totally. And to make this tug of war even more interesting, the video mentioned BlackRock.
Oh, wow.
You know, the world's largest asset manager.
Yeah.
Has added Bitcoin to its model portfolio.
BlackRock. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. They're known for being pretty conservative.
Right.
So this decision suggests they see Bitcoin as like a legitimate asset with long-term potential.
Yeah.
And this could start a trend.
Oh, interesting.
And encourage other big institutions to get into crypto.
So even with all this fear in the market,
right,
we're seeing big players starting to take crypto seriously.
Yeah.
Maybe Solana is next.
Who knows? That would be a big deal.
Yeah, it would. Speaking of big institutions, they also mention these upcoming Solana futures ETFs.
Right.
And that there's a high probability of a spot SOL ETF.
Yeah, it's been rumored for a while.
Being approved soon. And then also Franklin Templeton, another big asset manager, has proposed a SOL ETF that would include staking rewards.
Wow. Okay.
So hold on. What are ETFs and why is this ETF talk so important for Solana?
So ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, are basically like baskets of assets that trade on stock exchanges.
Okay.
They make it easier for investors to get exposure to specific sectors or asset classes.
Right.
So in this case, Solana ETFs would allow big institutional investors to invest in Solana without directly holding the cryptocurrency itself.
Okay.
And that could potentially bring a ton of money into Solana.
So it's like easier access for the big money players.
Exactly.
That sounds pretty good for Solana.
Yeah, it definitely has that potential.
Right.
And then including the staking rewards in some of these proposed ETFs is also really interesting.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Staking rewards are basically like incentives for holding and validating transactions on proof-of-stake blockchains.
Okay.
Like Solana. So if they include these rewards in the ETF, it might attract investors who are looking for passive income.
Oh, interesting.
From their crypto.
So ETFs could be a win-win for like everyone.
Yeah, potentially. But we do have to be realistic.
Yeah.
More money flowing in often means more volatility.
Right.
It's important to remember that ETFs are just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Solana's long-term success depends on the technology, how the ecosystem grows, and if it can actually solve real problems.
So we can't just ride the ETF wave. We have to look at the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Like what Solana is actually doing.
Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of what Solana is doing, the influencer mentioned a ton of updates.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about PayPal, but there was also this proposal to reduce Solana's inflation rate.
Right, and then some DeFi stuff happening with Camino and Radium.
Oh, yeah, Radium. That was the one connected to meme coin trading.
Right.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. Let's start with PayPal. I mean, expanding their stablecoin on Solana seems like a pretty big deal.
It is. It shows that Solana is becoming more appealing for real-world uses.
Yeah.
Stablecoins, which are pegged to fiat currencies like the US dollar, are becoming really important for payments and transactions.
Yeah, for sure.
And even DeFi. And Solana being able to handle high transaction volume at a low cost makes it an attractive platform for these stablecoin projects.
So it's not all just theoretical.
Right.
Solana is being used for like actual payments.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cool. And this potential reduction in Solana's inflation rate, what's that all about?
Yeah, so that's interesting because it shows how priorities are changing in the Solana ecosystem. Initially, that higher inflation rate was probably seen as necessary to incentivize early participation and growth.
Right.
But as things mature, people are realizing that high inflation can have downsides, especially for long-term token holders.
Right.
So the proposal to reduce it could make SOL more attractive to investors who want stability and value growth.
Right.
And not just quick gains.
Right.
But the validators ultimately have to vote on this.
Oh, right.
It's important to remember that Solana is governed by this decentralized network of validators who are responsible for processing transactions and securing the network.
Yeah.
They have a say in how things change, including the inflation rate.
So their interests might not always be the same as the token holders.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. All right, we've covered a ton of info about Solana in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We talked about market fear, Solana's price action, token unlocks, the Solana versus Ethereum debate, macro factors, institutional interest, and even some specific ecosystem updates.
That's a lot.
Yeah. We've seen both bullish and bearish signals. What are your main takeaways so far? What stands out to you as like the most important thing?
Yeah, take a minute to think about everything we talked about.
Yeah?
Write down your thoughts and any questions you have.
Yeah.
And then in the next part of our dive, we'll dig into those takeaways.
Okay.
And explore the different viewpoints in more detail.
Sounds good.
And try to see what's next for Solana.
Awesome. All right, stay tuned, everyone. All right, so we've laid out a lot of information about Solana, from like market sentiment and technical analysis to like the macro trends.
Yeah, a lot.
What's the overall picture looking like to you?
Well, I think we can definitely say that Solana, like a lot of the crypto market, is kind of in a turbulent period right now.
Yeah.
We've got like fear driving prices down.
Right.
Technical indicators that suggest maybe it could decline even more.
Yeah.
And this upcoming token unlock that's just making everything uncertain.
Right. But I mean, amidst all of that, we're also seeing like some potential strength. We've got this growing ecosystem. There's increasing institutional interest and like a really passionate community that believes in Solana.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's not a simple like bullish or bearish case.
It's not. No.
It's more complicated than that.
It's more nuanced. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back to that fear factor.
Okay.
We talked about it can be really unsettling to see prices drop.
Yeah.
But you've always said that experienced investors know that fear can actually create opportunities.
It can, yeah.
Like, if you believe in something and you buy when everyone else is afraid, you can get a discount.
You can accumulate assets at a lower price, exactly.
But obviously, you got to be smart about it.
You have to, understand risk management.
Right.
And be prepared to potentially ride out more volatility.
So it's not just buying the dip because everyone else is. Right. You really have to believe in it.
Yeah, have that conviction.
And when it comes to Solana, I think that conviction for a lot of people comes from the technology. It's fast, it's scalable.
Right.
It's got low transaction fees.
It does.
And those are all things that developers like.
Absolutely.
And, the Solana influencer kept saying Solana's the Ethereum killer.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But then the technical expert was showing that Ethereum is actually outperforming Solana.
Yeah.
So how do we make sense of that?
Well, The influencer is like an advocate for Solana.
Right.
So they're obviously going to be bullish.
Right.
But the technical analysis is based more on data.
Yeah.
And it suggests that, at least for now, Ethereum is still ahead.
Right.
It doesn't mean Solana is doomed.
Right.
But it shows how hard it is to compete with something like Ethereum.
So maybe it's less about one killing the other and more like they both coexist.
Right. Maybe they can serve different needs in the crypto ecosystem.
Yeah, like Ethereum is the reliable one,
Yeah.
and Solana is the disruptor.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And just like any competition, it's not just about the technology.
Right.
It's also about who uses it.
Exactly. Adoption is key.
How engaged the community is,
Right.
and if it can actually solve problems.
Real problems that people have.
Okay, let's switch gears a little and talk about those ecosystem updates.
Okay.
We talked about the PayPal news, but there was also that proposal to reduce Solana's inflation rate.
Right.
What do you think about that?
That's really interesting because it shows how things are changing in the Solana ecosystem.
Right.
Like at first, high inflation was good because it encouraged people to get involved.
Yeah, to grow the network.
But now they're thinking more long term.
Yeah.
And they're realizing that high inflation can be bad for token holders.
Right.
So by reducing inflation, it could make SOL more attractive to investors who care about the long term.
So it's like they're shifting from just growing really fast to a more sustainable approach?
That's a good way to put it.
But don't the validators have to vote on this?
They do, yeah. It's important to remember that Solana is governed by this decentralized network of validators.
Right.
And they're responsible for keeping the network secure.
Yeah.
So they have a say in these big decisions.
So it's like a real political process.
It is, yeah.
Where different people have different priorities.
Exactly. And that's what makes crypto so fascinating.
Speaking of big forces, we can't forget about the macroeconomic factors.
Right.
Remember they said that Bitcoin's price was tied to global liquidity?
Yeah.
And we could see a recovery as M2 money supply increases. But then they also mentioned the U.S. trade deficit and the potential for negative GDP growth.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah. How do we make sense of all that?
Well, macroeconomics is really complicated, and it's always changing.
Right.
It's really hard to predict how it'll affect anything, let alone crypto.
Yeah.
But we can try to understand what these trends mean and how they might change investor behavior.
So the expanding global liquidity could be good because it means more money is available to invest.
Potentially, yeah.
But the negative economic indicators could scare investors away.
Right, it's like a push and pull.
Yeah, exactly.
But remember, BlackRock added Bitcoin to their portfolio.
Right, that was huge.
Which was a big deal.
So maybe, even though everyone's scared,
yeah,
institutions are still interested.
They are, and that institutional interest is why there's so much buzz about the Solana ETFs.
Yeah, those could make it even easier for big investors to get into Solana.
Right, and that could drive up the price.
But more institutional money could also mean more volatility.
It could, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a guaranteed win.
Right, there's always risk.
Always.
But it's really interesting to see how all these different things are affecting the crypto world.
It is. It's constantly changing.
Okay, listener, we've covered a lot in this part of our deep dive.
We have.
We've talked about fear and opportunity.
Yeah.
The Solana versus Ethereum thing. Those ecosystem updates.
The inflation rate.
Right, and the macro stuff. What are your biggest takeaways? What are you still thinking about? Take some time to think about everything we've discussed.
Yeah.
And consider the different viewpoints.
Right.
And in the last part of our dive, we'll wrap things up.
Okay.
Some key takeaways and a question to leave you thinking.
All right, we've really been digging into Solana.
Yeah, we have.
From all that fear in the market to like the potential of these upcoming ETFs.
Yeah.
It seems like Solana is kind of at a crossroads.
It really does. It's a really interesting time for this blockchain.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for our listener, trying to make sense of all this, it's a lot.
It is.
Like, how do you take all this information and like make a decision?
Right. How does it all fit together?
Yeah. So let's try to like bring it all together. What are the big takeaways here? What should our listener really be focusing on?
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Well, first off, I think we got to acknowledge that market sentiment.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of fear out there, and that's definitely affecting Solana's price.
It is, just like the rest of the market.
But like we said, fear can also create opportunities.
Right, if you can stay calm and focus on what really matters.
Right, on the fundamentals.
So let's talk about those fundamentals. What does Solana have going for it that makes people think it could still do well, even though the market's down?
Well, like, from a technology standpoint,
yeah,
Solana's got a lot of advantages. Fast transactions, low fees, it can scale really well.
Right.
Those are all things that attract developers and projects, especially in DeFi and NFTs.
For sure.
And then all those ecosystem updates like PayPal using their stablecoin on Solana and that proposal to reduce the inflation rate.
Yeah, those are big.
Those make it seem like Solana's still growing and improving.
It does suggest that.
But we also have to think about like the competition.
Right, we can't forget about Ethereum.
Yeah, Ethereum's still the big one, even with its issues.
It is. It's got that massive network and the developers love it.
So is it like a winner-take-all situation? Or can they both be successful?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they can both coexist and do their own thing.
Right, serve different parts of the market.
But it's a tough competition.
Yeah, only time will tell.
And then we have those macroeconomic factors, too.
Right. The global liquidity thing could be good.
Yeah, more money coming into crypto.
But the U.S. trade deficit and the potential for negative GDP growth,
those are definitely risks.
It's hard to know what'll happen.
Yeah, macro is always unpredictable.
But we can't forget about BlackRock adding Bitcoin to their portfolio.
Oh, yeah, that was huge.
That shows that institutions are still interested.
Definitely.
And maybe those Solana ETFs will bring in even more institutional money.
It's possible.
So we've got technology, competition, macroeconomics, institutions. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And that's why we do these deep dives.
Right, to try to break it all down.
To really look at all the information and figure out what it means.
So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's what we want you to think about. Given everything we've talked about, what do you think about Solana's future?
Yeah. What's your assessment?
Do you think it can be a major player in the blockchain world?
Or are the risks just too big?
There's no right or wrong answer here.
The important thing is to think critically and make your own decisions.
And remember, the crypto world is constantly changing.
So stay curious and keep learning.
All right, everyone. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
And happy investing.